Hello, I'm Joe Morocco, and this is another coffee education video brought to you by Cafe Imports. Today we're going to teach you how to cup coffee. So cupping is the sensorial evaluation that coffee professionals use to measure the quality of coffee or to ensure that there are no defects in the cup. In particular, we use our taste and smell. What are we looking for? We're looking for quality in the coffee. Not only positive qualities, but also negative qualities. We're trying to determine how good a coffee is, but also what are the potential negatives that could make this coffee become bad eventually.
Here are the tools you'll need to set up this cupping. You'll need cups, at least 3. You'll need some spoons, at least 2 per person. You'll need a tray to hold the coffee, and you'll need that coffee to go into that tray. We like to keep the label with the coffee at all times, and we also like to use another tray to cover the coffee to keep it blind. You'll need a scale to weigh your coffee, and you'll need a vessel to put the coffee in while you're weighing it. You'll also need a timer to time your entire cupping, and a rinser to rinse your spoons. You'll also want a spittoon of some kind so that you can spit out the coffee. You'll also need a grinder. You'll also need a few other things. You'll need some aprons to keep yourself clean. You'll also need a clipboard. You'll definitely want a score sheet of some kind and a writing utensil. We prefer pencils. And don't forget that spoon. You'll also want some buddies. The more people that cup, the more calibrated your cupping will be.
So here's your protocol for how to behave in the cupping room. Make sure that you go in with a focused mental attitude. Don't smell of anything, such as cigarette smoke, cologne, perfume, or body odor. Don't say anything. What you say can interfere with the other people that are cupping in the room.
So now that you're in the cupping lab, you'll want to weigh your coffee. Coffee needs to be weighed as whole bean. Your ratio is 8.5 grams per 150 milliliters of water. Once you have the coffee weighed, put it into the individual cups, and then that coffee should not be mixed with any other cup. This isolates a defect, so if a defect is in one cup, you can taste it in only that cup. You'll also want to make sure that you get a small sample of that coffee to grind through the grinder as a purge. Be sure to blind your coffee and keep your label with that specific coffee. This ensures that we don't have any confusion. We also take only one sample at a time to the grinder so that when we return the sample to the table, we know that it's in the right spot. When grinding, we put a small sample through the grinder first to purge out any old coffee so that you now only have that particular coffee sample being tasted in each cup. Make sure that the purge goes all the way through and then grind your coffee into a clean cup. We like to use an extra cup so that you can pour with 1 cup into the grinder and capture the grounds in another cup. Once the coffee's ground, you'll want to evaluate the coffee as soon as you can. If you have to wait more than 15 minutes, you want to have a lid to put on the grounds. Our first step of evaluation is to smell the dry grounds for what we call fragrance. You'll want to make sure that you write down and note your impressions of the coffee. Now you're ready to add water. When you add water, make sure to start your timer at the exact same time. Make sure that your water is between 195 and 205 degrees Fahrenheit. You want to make sure that the water is clean and to coffee brewing specifications. When pouring, pour all the way and fill the cup until you see a meniscus form. This allows that ratio to meet its exact criteria. Now it's time to break. Approach the cup with your nose very close to the grounds and push your spoon away from your nose toward the back of the cup. There is protocol surrounding this. We go from front to back 3 times. It's important that each person that is cupping during a cupping does this the same way. In our cupping lab, one person breaks 1 cup at each set. If we have 3 cups, we make sure that it's only 3 people that are breaking. Once a cup is broken, you don't want to go back and break that cup again. Make sure that you take note of all of the aromas that you're getting in that breaking period. We call that the aromatic evaluation. Now that you've broken the crust and evaluated the aroma of the coffee, it's time to skim off the foam. This is done simply by taking 2 spoons toward the back end of the cup and pulling them toward yourself while spanning the entire surface. And now we wait. We allow the coffee to cool. We like to start our tasting portion of the cupping right around 160 degrees. Usually that takes us about 14 to 16 minutes since we've poured the water. The first round of taste evaluation is done rather briefly, and it's more of an introduction to the coffee. The coffee is still hot, and so you can't really taste everything in the cup quite yet. What we're looking for is any major standout flavor notes that the coffee may have, positive or negative. This is done simply by taking your spoon, dipping it into the bowl, filling it a little bit with the coffee liquid, and then slurping that loudly off of the spoon. We use a fast burst of air to suck the coffee into our mouths so that the coffee becomes almost airborne. We call this aspiration. Beginning our second round of evaluation, we like to approach the coffee closer to around 120 degrees. The coffee is still relatively warm, but it's not hot enough to burn our tongues. At this point, a lot of the more nuanced flavors of the coffee begin to come to fruition. And sometimes this means that a defect will really rear its head. When we find a defect in our lab, we push that defect out of the way. Some defects can influence your palate and make you no longer have the ability to taste very well. The second evaluation is where we really begin to dig into the scoring of a coffee. We'll begin attributing numerical values to the flavors and the experiences that we're getting in the cup. We'll also make sure to write down any flavor notes that are standout attributes of the coffee. And don't forget, we're doing this in silence. We don't want to speak about what we're tasting, and we don't want to make any kind of facial cues to cue somebody into what our experiences may be. This may also be a good time to refresh your rinser water. Keeping that rinse water hot and fresh makes sure that you don't spread germs and that your spoons stay clean. And now we're ready for the third round. In our lab, sometimes we'll actually go in the reverse order that we went before. We try to change it up so that we get a new look on the coffee, and this is more of a check on the notes that we've already put on our score sheet. We want to make sure that the score that we have at the end of the cupping is kind of an amalgamation of the scores that we've collected throughout the cupping. The final taste on the coffee should not be your final score. It should be taken into consideration with the entire event. Now that you're done evaluating the coffee, it's time to calibrate with your co-cuppers. Remember that during this entire cupping, nobody knew which coffees were on the table, much less the order that those coffees were put into. This is when we finally discover what coffees we were tasting, and we learn the impressions that those coffees made on our co-cuppers. Our sensory analysis director leads us in a score debriefing, where we share our scores openly, discuss the attributes of the coffee, and then our scores are added up and that coffee gets a final score. We have very specific attributes that add up to very specific scores for specific coffees, and it takes a lot of time to understand how these attributes function and work together. We'll address this in future videos.
So now that you functionally know how to cup, it's important that you practice. Keep good records. Have access to those records. If you don't have access to good records, the cuppings never happen. Also, of course, cupping is a lot more in-depth than what we've shown in this short video. For more in-depth information, for the whys and hows of our protocols, make sure that you look deeper into the notes that we've provided that accompany this video.